Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment you are going to hear the voice of a man who will tell you some tremendously important facts.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I have an awesome guest today on the podcast, Joanne Dimaggio. I think probably one of the most prolific writers we've had on the podcast. She's written many books, a specialist in past life regression, and she has an amazing book that I just read. I did it to myself again. We'll talk about that in a second. But Joanne is so nice. I was a little late to this interview, so I apologize to her again. But she is remarkable, and I want everybody to go and find her books. We're going to talk about reincarnation and past life and Edgar Cayce and a variety of wonderful topics. Joanne has been actively involved with Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment since 1987 and has been the coordinator for ARE Charlottesville since August of 2008. She earned her master's in transpersonal studies degree and her spiritual mentor certification through Atlantic University. Joanne has given talks on the subject of past life exploration and soul writing to audiences across the country. In addition, she has been the guest on nearly 70 radio programs and has had several articles published in Venture Inward. She has been professionally pursuing past life research therapy for over 30 years and once headed her own past life research center where she interacted with some of the country's leading past life professionals. She's the author of 6 books. Joanne conducts private sessions at the Unity Holistic Healing Center, a service of Unity of Charlottesville, of which she is the director. And you can find more on Joanne at joannedimaggio.com. To begin with, thank you so much for coming on. This is such a fascinating topic. So let's give the viewers a little background where you came from and how you got so interested in soul writing and reincarnation and the many topics that you've written about.
Well, I've been interested in reincarnation since I was a teenager. During the summer, I would read books about Edgar Cayce and books that were written by Jess Stern and Ruth Montgomery. I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic school, but it didn't make any sense to me in terms of, being a fair and just way of life. So I started looking into this and I read about karma and I read about reincarnation and I thought, this makes a lot more sense. So I was just doing some exploration at that point. Then I sort of forgot about it, got married, had a family. And then in 1987, Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb was made into a mini series. I don't know how many of your listeners will remember that. That was quite a while ago. And that was like my big wake-up call because she had quite a bit on reincarnation in that series. And so I thought it just reignited my enthusiasm and my passion. And I've been doing this work ever since. So I joined the ARE that year. I founded my own past life research organization that year. And this was all when I was living outside of Chicago. And now I'm in Virginia and have been here since 1995 and continue to do the work. The soul writing, which is a written form of meditation, was something that I learned through the ARE. It was actually my thesis for my master's degree. So that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that Edgar Cayce taught. And so I have picked up on that and have taught that to people. But the past life work has really been truly the work of my heart. And I've been doing it for, well over 30 years now. And it's just been a joy and a very humbling experience for me to be helping people in a way that traditional therapy can't address.
So before we go into detail on these books, I want to go on the big picture topics because we talk about reincarnation a lot on my podcast, and I cover many authors, and some sort of contradict, and some actually. Did I lose you? Are you still there?
No, I'm here.
Okay, and so some sort of contradict the idea of reincarnation. There's different ideas of what's happening when we have past life memories and experiences. My memory of my childhood is faint enough, so it's the idea of having a memory of a past life for some people is hard to conceive of. I
Mhm.
also understand how the Akashic record works and the universal mind. So I know on some level, as I have through meditations, I can experience anybody's life on some level by going through the Akashic, much like Edgar Cayce did. So are we actually experiencing a past life or a memory from the Akashic when we have a past life regression? How can you tell that it's specific to you and not just a fragment of somebody's life in the Akashic? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, well, I haven't had anybody that's ever gotten a fragment of somebody else's life
Right.
through Edgar Cayce would go to the Akashic records and he would get information for a person when he was doing readings for them. What I do is we use guided imagery. All the memories of all your past lives are stored in your soul. They're there. They've
Right.
always been there. All you have to do is have a sincere desire to revisit that time and that place again. So what I do when I work with a client is I ask their soul to take them to the lifetime that's most impacting them right now. In other words, this is a life that somebody may have done something to them. They may have done something to somebody else in which they had an illness or a trauma or a triumph or a success or disappointment, whatever. And for some reason, they didn't finish it in that lifetime. And their soul waited until it was the right time to come in and work on that issue. So sometimes they'll go back 1,000 years and they'll be working on an issue from 1,000 years ago. Sometimes they only go back to the previous lifetime immediately prior to this one. But because we've had so many past lives, you can't possibly work on all of them at the same time. That's why I say, to them, let your soul take you to the life that's most impacting you today. What are the issues that you brought in with you, the talents, skills, and abilities that you brought in with you from this particular past life? And so that's where we go. We go and we examine that in great detail. And then depending on how deep they want to get into that lifetime, we might add the soul writing at the end of it, which helps to, kind of fill in the blanks, because you can't get everything in just a course of an hour and a half. Or I might do one that will take them to the afterlife so they can see how they planned the life that they're leading right now. That's why I called my book, I Did It to Myself Again, because we do it to ourselves. We can't really blame anybody else for what's going on in our lives. We set it up to be this way. Or if they're dealing with the physical karma, if they have some sort of a chronic illness and they don't know the origin of it, it may have been rooted in a previous lifetime. Dr. Norman Shealy, who, is a medical doctor, I heard him at the ARE during a conference on medical intuition, and he said that he believed all illness was past life related. So that was, I was like, whoa, a medical doctor saying this. It was, and I decided to look into that as well. And I did a whole research project on that. So there's various elements in past life work that you could get into, but even a basic regression will provide you with a lot of answers to questions that you haven't been able to answer on your own.
Okay. I was just reading a book by Dick Sutphin, who also did past life regressions, and he noticed in some cases he would notice that people had lived at the same timelines and theorized it's possible that you can reincarnate within the same timeline at the same time. Have you ever seen that with any clients? Like seemingly they're recalling lives that lived in parallel at the same time.
I've had people who've had lifetimes that have overlapped. In other words, because when you ask them, when were you born and when did you die? And then when they were born and when they died in this life, sometimes they overlap. There's a theory about parallel lives. There's all kinds of theories out there about how these lifetimes could happen simultaneously, but I have never really had that experience in all the years that I've been working with this.
I loved your book on Edgar Cayce and Thomas Jefferson. It was a fascinating and very at the beginning you call yourself the reporter to the universe, and this story of how you connected with this person who Edgar Cayce had given a reading to at a very young age, saying that this was the reincarnation of Thomas Jefferson. And it's just fascinating book, because this person was connected to Edgar Cayce. And you kind of told your own story of how you guys connected. And what do you think when you have clients that say that there's some famous person, which is common, and then sometimes that makes people cynical about it? What is your when somebody says, hey, I was, this queen from Russia or a former president, which is that common? Or
like why are there so many Cleopatras, right?
Right.
It is not common, believe it or not.
Okay.
Now with Thomas Jefferson, T.J. Davis, having been Jefferson, and he was Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great too.
Now this is coming from Edgar Cayce, who was the greatest psychic of the 20th century. And I don't know that I've studied the readings for many, many years, and I don't know that Mr. Cayce was ever wrong in any of his. Now, I have met other Thomas Jeffersons who've come forward and said that they're Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
I had one woman who came to me and said she was sure she was Patrick Henry. And I said, why do you think you were Patrick Henry? She said, because he's a good talker and so am I.
Oh, yeah.
So there are some people who, on the very flimsiest of evidence, have created in their mind that there's somebody famous. Right. So what I'd say to them, if they say they're Napoleon, let's say, I would say to them, okay, are you on top of the horse looking out at the crowd, or are you in the crowd looking up at Napoleon? Because let's face it, famous people have had hundreds or thousands of people see them during the course of their lifetime, right? So how are you identifying? If you are looking at him on the horse, then you're not him.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one woman said she was Martha Jefferson because she got this strange feeling when she was in Williamsburg. Well, I get a strange feeling every time I'm in Williamsburg too, So, and yet I met one gentleman who came in and told me he was Stonewall Jackson. And I worked with him several regressions, and I do believe that that's who he was. He looks like him. He had memories that in the course of the regression that nobody else had, like where everything was in his house and things like that. So all of us as souls have had interesting lives over the millennium that we've been on the earth. The people who are famous, they're entitled to incarnate again as well. They have issues to work out. The fellow that's Thomas Jefferson is dealing with poverty issues. And the thing he says he's most upset about is the whole slavery issue. So, so you come in, and he's had a very lackluster life this time around. I think people also believe that if you were somebody famous, that you have to top that. That you have to keep getting more and more famous, or, that you're not going to go from being really famous down to being, a sailor on a, I don't know, like a pirate or something like that. But you do, you like Mr. Cayce said, in that life that soul gained, in that life that soul lost. So it's up and down as we decide which issues we want to deal with and we want to work on in any particular past life.
I understand. So help me to work through what I have when I try. As a hypnotist, I have done past life regressions. And for people that I would recommend, even from what you've read, the most effective ones are 2 or 3 hours. It's a long, those to me are the most resonant and authentic and believable. If you sit down with someone for a long period of time, you get more accurate and believable and powerful information. Right. If somebody's doing a past life regression in 20 minutes, it's likely you're not really accessing the information, right?
Right. And people also need to be careful that they're not going to a reader. In other words, having somebody tell them who they were in a previous life. Nobody has that information more accurately than you do, because it's in your soul. So, I mean, there are people that are psychics that are out there that are very, very talented and may be able to do that. But the ideal way of doing it is for you to go within.
Right.
Let your conscious mind just sort of go in the background. Let your subconscious come forward and reveal to you a life, and then work with a competent, reputable therapist who knows what they're doing,
Right.
who knows what questions to ask, who know how to get you into that very deep, relaxed state that you need to be in to access this information. That they do the guided imagery or whatever they do to assist you. They know what questions to ask. They know how to interpret what they're getting, but they don't spoon feed anything to you.
Right.
You're on it's best if it comes directly from you, because that's how you learn.
Have you found it most effective in person, the ones, or can you do it like through Zoom or something like that?
You know what's funny, Brian? When COVID started, I know you were reading about the healing center, and we closed the healing center after COVID, and my friend Peter Woodbury, who's also a past life therapist, said, well, I do all of mine by Zoom. And I go, how do you do that? Don't you have to be present so you could touch them if something happens, And he said, no. And so I got some of my friends, I said, would you just act as my guinea pigs? Because I don't want to do this with a client, if it's not going to work. Actually, it's better.
Yeah.
I find it's better because you're in your own home, so you can relax, and you don't have that anxiety of getting in a car and driving somewhere and meeting somebody you don't know, and you know that you're in your own comfy chair or you're in your own bed or whatever. And so I have found greater success on Zoom than I have in person.
Wow. So personally, I've encountered this even working with someone, that my guides and a part of me, my higher self, doesn't want me to access my past lives, that it would work to my detriment, that I'm on the right path, that if I start going in that direction, that it's going to take me on a route that is not effective for me now. Have you encountered that before? Like you have somebody that it would be great for you to know about all these past lives, but right now it's not going to help you.
Yeah, well, usually I do have some people, very few, who get absolutely nothing. They say it's all blank, it's all black. They don't see anything. They question whether they're really relaxed enough or whatever. Some people are just, you're right, they're not meant to see this. Although I believe the soul wouldn't show you something you can't handle. So, but some of them do come in with a great deal of fear because they don't know what's going to happen. They're worried. I try to reassure them and establish a rapport that they're safe. I always say a prayer of protection, surround them with white light before we even begin. And most of them have very successful journeys. Now, some of them, if they don't get anything with one script, I'll switch to another one, then I'll switch to a third one. If after the third one we don't get anything, then that session is not going to work out. But I would say a good 95% of the people I work with do get something. I think a lot of it is they're afraid to let go. They're afraid to say out loud what they're seeing, if they're seeing something, and I tell them, I said, I've heard it all. Don't worry about it. You can tell me anything. I'm not going to judge you, So, but most of them do get something, and they get these aha moments, and then I tell them too, I said, if you experience emotion, if you feel like crying, and many of them do, they'll just break down in tears. That's a sign that it's real, because I cannot make them cry in a regressive state. So a lot of them have aha moments, and a lot of them they can make the connection very easily between what's going on in their life today and that past life. In other words, they could see how it's directly the parallels between the two, the behavior patterns are repeating themselves. So it's very, very valuable for them in that regard.
How often have you encountered people talking about past lives on other planets?
Very, very, very seldom. In the 35 years I've been doing this work, I can count on one hand. I remember most of them are, one of them, I remember her saying how lonely she was.
Mhm.
And she felt that she had come from another planet. She was on this planet. And she kept talking about, I want to go home. I can't do it here. I can't resonate to anything here. Some people have talked about like going and coming. But it's very seldom, very, very seldom that anybody tells me that they have left the planet. Because I always also tell them too, Edgar Cayce said, whatever you start on the earth, you have to finish on the earth. So if we're looking at a past life pattern, chances are it began here and you need to finish it here. So they stay earthbound as we talk about their experience.
Have you ever had any entities come in while you're doing the past life regression that were not them, but speaking to you like almost channeled?
Yeah, and it scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
I had one woman who, and I've been doing this a long time, so really nothing surprises me. But this woman had an attached entity, and she reminded me of the Linda Blair character in what was in The Exorcist.
Right.
Because her face would be contorted and her fingers would scrunch up, and she started calling that woman a little piggy. And I mean, it was really bizarre and it was kind of scary. So I've not had anybody channel a higher entity like an ascended master coming in and talking or anything like that. So they tend not to do any channeling, but except for that one time when I experienced that with that, but she kind of warned me ahead of time that might happen. Wow. So she knew she had some energies that had taken up residence inside of her body. So it was strange. Yeah.
So the really fascinating book, your recent book, I did it to myself again, New Life Between Lives, is fascinating. This is sort of based on a research project that you conducted. It was 23 women and 2 men, correct?
Right.
And you asked questions about what happens when we die and what happens between lives, and it's so fascinating. Anybody, I recommend they check that book out. And I wanted to ask you some questions from it. So let's tell everybody that's listening what you found about when we die. What is the experience like, as you shared in the book, for when we die, for this unknown thing that so many people are afraid of?
Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons, Brian, that I did the project. It's because I had so many, well, I did it for a couple of reasons. One was because I had a lot of clients, a lot of people were expressing fear of death. This was around the COVID time, and they really were afraid. Others were, I've had many clients who come to me and then they blame everybody for what's going on in their life. Oh, it's my husband's fault. It's my wife's fault. It's my parents' fault. Especially parents really take a hit. It's my teacher's fault. Everybody's fault but theirs. And I knew that wasn't true. So I wanted to show that that wasn't true. And I knew that there had already been done some research into life between lives. Dr. Michael Newton had done quite a bit of work in that regard. And a lot of what I was reading did not gel with what Mr. Cayce had taught or had in his readings. And so I thought, well, I wonder which is true, And so I thought the only way I'm going to find out is for me to do my own research. So luckily I have a lot of people who are always willing to be part of my research studies. It was odd that in this one, there were so many women as opposed to men. Usually it's a little bit more balanced than that. But I would ask them questions about, what does it feel like to die? What happens at that exact moment of death? what do you see? What do you feel? You know, so some people said that, most people said it was a very gentle, painless process. They just sort of floated out. Others said they were squeezed out or popped out. Their soul popped out of the physical body. And the ones who suffered a traumatic death, you know, said that their soul left their body before the body actually died. So that they didn't suffer all that pain. You think of Joan of Arc being burnt at the stake and all the women that were accused of being witches. They left their body before the body actually died so that they didn't have to experience that. I was asking them, what are your last thoughts as your soul leaves your body? Because that often sets up the next lifetime. I had a woman who had head to toe psoriasis. And I asked her at that moment of death, what were her last thoughts? She was a call girl in the Old West. And she said her last thought was, I don't want to be touched anymore. So she manifests a skin condition in this life in which nobody wants to touch her. So you got to be careful what you're thinking at that.
Yeah.
A lot of them said that that it was a very freeing experience. Some of them described it as a shift in frequency. A lot of them talked about seeing vivid colors and beams of white light. And then I asked them whether they saw, you know, the story about St. Peter and the pearly gates. I always have that image in my mind.
Yeah,
about,
me too.
you know, he's standing there by this podium and he's checking off, and you go on this side or you go on that side. And so I said, do you see a gateway or welcome station when you first go into spirit? And most of them, 52% said they did. They did see something like that. But some of them didn't. Some of them said, hey, I've done this many times before. I don't need to check in at a welcome station. I'm just going to go on, you know. Many of them met up with a guide that was going to be with them while they were in the afterlife to serve as, to kind of take them around, sort of show them the ropes. Some of them met up with members of their soul family. It was like a big family reunion. So the souls that they had known in previous lives, you know, they got a chance to meet up with them. They had a chance to talk to their guide about their previous life, sort of a debriefing session if they wanted it. And then their spirit home, what they created in the afterlife, while they stay in the afterlife, they create their own home. And many of them said, whatever we think of, we manifest. So if I want to live in the house that I used to live in on earth, I will just think that, and the house will be there. Right. So some of them said they were living in a chalet, and others were in some sort of a pastoral setting, and others were, you know, in a log cabin or something like that. They just would create that with their mind. And then they went on to meet with, they went to the council of chamber, Council of Elders chamber. And the Council of Elders are like guidance counselors in school. So if you think about, you know, if you think of Earth as a school and your life contains the curriculum of things you're working on, lesson plans, so to speak. So you meet with the Council of Elders and you go over those lesson plans and you go, you know, you didn't pass this. You might want to think about trying this one again. And, oh, you don't need to do this. You passed this class, you know. So you work with your elders, you design the life, you list your karmic issues, your karmic attributes, and you figure out what is your soul's mission going to be. And then you select your parents, and then members of your soul family will say whether they want to come in with you or not, you know, because we travel together as a pod, as a soul pod. Right. So the same souls that are with you now have been with you since the beginning of time, but we change our gender and we change our roles. So all that's going on. It's a lot. It's not like going and sitting in a hammock and drinking iced tea or something. You've got all this that you're planning and putting it together, and then you pick out what body you're going to have and the memory triggers that you're going to have that'll remind you of your past life once you get on the earth. Then you sort of take the shuttle and come back and start again, all over again as a baby.
So you, a lot of times it seems like you end up with one positive parent and one sort of negative parent. I see that pattern. Did you find that, with people, struggle with one of their two parents, almost by choice?
Yes. And a lot of times parents come as a package. So if
Okay.
you want this one parent, if you want this father, you're going to have this mother,
Right.
and vice versa, right? So I asked them, well, what lesson did you learn by having Sally and John as your parents? What did they teach you that no other mother or father could have taught you? All right.
Mhm.
So within the context of that family dynamic, there's a lesson that they're learning. Maybe they're learning compassion, maybe they're learning patience, or maybe how to survive in an abusive environment, or any number of issues that come up in the course of a lifetime. The parents are there to it's not a random choice of who you have as your mom and dad. That's why, I tell my children, you picked me, what do you want? But you learn something from both of them. And sometimes the lessons are harsh, but sometimes the lessons are very loving and beautiful. So, but it's all done by design. There's no accidental pairing of people.
Right. So, that you mentioned, and I want to go back to the council session, and in most of the cases, it's old dudes with long beards.
I know, isn't that funny? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's because in our remember, we create whatever we need to create that
Right.
makes us comfortable, right? A lot of people think of going before the Council of Elders as going into like a courtroom type of thing where they're going to be judged.
Mhm.
So they create images of old men in gray hair with a beard, wearing a robe, sitting above them, looking down at them. But in reality, I asked people what did the elders look like to them. I had people who said they had biblical characters among their elders. I had people who said they were just, some of them said they were nature spirits. Like one person said she saw a whale, which I thought was really bizarre, but that's what she saw. Other people saw funny, like, oh, I saw Tinkerbell or Jack in the Box, or, so it was whatever their mind was creating. It wasn't so much important what they looked like, but what did they learn by working with these people that were assigned to them? One woman said she saw Jesus working on as one of her elders, and she burst into tears when she said that, because she felt so honored. But like I said, everybody created whatever images that made them comfortable, but in the long run, it didn't much matter about that part of it. It was what they learned from them.
So it's like we're creating the image of these elders, and it's probably a little bit different in each case, right?
Oh yeah.
So the time between lives on average is 50 years, 100.
50 to usually, my studies have shown 50 to 200 years between lifetimes.
Okay. So
but unless you're a suicide or you're murdered, or you're in a war and you get killed, those people come back almost immediately, because it's like dropping out of school. If you keep using the earth as a school analogy, if you drop out, you got to come back and you got to finish that course. So they tend to come back almost overnight. For a long time, well, during the 60s, when we had the Vietnam War, we had certain music, certain clothes that, and then suddenly 20 years later, here comes this generation that's wearing bell bottoms and tie dye and listening to 60s music. And the theory was that these were souls whose lives had been cut short, and they all came back, and they wanted to recreate what the ambiance that they had known when they were alive in the previous lifetime.
So what that sort of means is that there's like soul generations then. The same group that was all together at Atlantis 200 years probably were all together at the same time. And so
Yeah.
More than just a soul family, that all the souls on the planet at a given time are all sort of related on a larger level too at the same time.
Yeah. We have those that are close to us. And what I tell my clients is that when you're going to look at these souls, because one of the questions I ask in a regression is, does anybody from your past life feel like somebody in your current life? And I tell them, now remember, they're not going to look the same. So your mother in this life could have been your husband in the previous life. Or your grandmother in this life could have been your sister in a previous life. We change roles, we change genders, and we decide we're going to help work on a specific lesson. We come in that way. But you could tell who they are because you could feel them out. You could, if you're really in tune with them, how somebody, you'll say, gee, you feel awfully familiar to me, because on some level, you're sensing the familiarity. The eyes always remain the same. As Shakespeare said, eyes are the windows to the soul. They are. But you just have to use your other senses and feeling these other people out. And that's one of the wonderful things about a regression, because I do ask them to identify somebody in the previous life who may be in their life now. Some of them will say, nobody, I don't see anybody. And then others will say, yeah, they'll recognize one person or the other. So
is there a way to escape this wheel of reincarnation constantly? You've learned from all these people that what their goals are and their missions are. At some point, there's a further purpose to move to another level of consciousness. At least that's my suspicion, my intuition. Have you got any idea from what your studies have shown what we need to do to move to that next level?
Well, we just have to really pay attention to what is the lesson that we signed up for in this life, and to finish it, not to avoid it, not to put it on the back burner or not to think about it. For me, it was acceptance and approval. I came in needing to work on those two issues. And so throughout my whole life, I struggled with that whole issue of being accepted and approved. And so finally, when I realized, acceptance and approval comes from within and from above, not from outside validation, the lesson was complete. It was over. I didn't have to do it again. So that's what it's all about. We are, and you've heard this, I'm sure, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So we want to have every experience we possibly can. The old expression when they talk about old souls to me are just slow learners, because we were all created at the exact same moment. Okay, there aren't some of us that are older than the other. The difference is some of us have come to the earth a lot more often than the other souls. So in coming more often, we've taken more courses and I've accumulated more knowledge and more wisdom. And there's going to reach a point where there's nothing left for us to learn, and then we don't have to come back anymore.
It's amazing and really powerful to think about, where we have been and what we're doing and where we're going and what it all means. And you start to really see it as you do these past life regressions. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Edgar Cayce. I'm an ARE member too. I recommend it if you want to read Edgar's channelings, and you can also, they have trips and they have a lot of a variety of benefits. Edgar Cayce did a lot more than people think. And so you've been studying Edgar Cayce for a while. One of my most fascinating aspects is what he said about the book of Revelation. He sort of changed my understanding of the Bible and what it meant. Meaning that it's talking about meditation. We're moving where it's talking about, it's symbolic, and that the Bible is more symbolic in my understandings of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about specific topics like that, but when you think about Cayce, he was a very staunch Christian. He read the
Right.
Bible every year of his life, once every year, and taught Sunday school. So suddenly he's downloading all this information, which he didn't at first, because out of the 14,000 readings he did, 12,000 of those are health readings.
Hmm.
So in the beginning, all he was getting was information about different illnesses, and he was providing remedies for people.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, somebody asked another question, and suddenly he's downloading information about the universe, about how the universe operates, about reincarnation, about Atlantis, and a myriad of other topics. I mean, there's just so many. The readings are so rich.
So
That's
amazing.
one of the things that T.J. Davis said. People asked him, what does he prefer? Was it the fact that he was Thomas Jefferson that was so important to him? And he said, no, it was the fact that I grew up in the Cayce household.
Hmm.
Because he said to me, Joanne, every question that humanity has, the answers are in those readings if they would just take the time to read them. Now, I know the language in the readings is sometimes a little difficult to get through, but there's certainly a lot of books out there that have interpreted them. And ARE members can obviously go online and search any reading. You could type in the topic that you're searching for, and then the readings will all come up. So for those who are doing health related readings, there's a 12,000 of those, and then the other ones, another 2,000 are the reincarnation one. And he only gave like 4 past lives at the most to anybody,
Right.
because he said you can't possibly work on more than that. But it's a treasure trove.
It really
It's
is.
a treasure trove, and we're so lucky to have that. And I thank God that Gladys Davis, his secretary, after Mr. Cayce died in 1945, she did everything she could to salvage those readings and to keep them for us. And now they're in the Edgar Cayce Foundation has them. They're in a very secure, safe vault. Members can go. And certainly for me, the biggest joy that I had was working in the archives when I was researching the book about T.J. Davis. And also their library. I mean, that's the second largest metaphysical library, I think, in the world, next to the Vatican. You go up in that library and you've got all these books. I just love to sit there because the wisdom from all those books just comes down on you. And so I love to go there and do and write. And I'm lucky I'm only 3 hours away from Virginia Beach, so I can head out there on a weekend if I wanted to. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to read the readings and pick up books about Mr. Cayce because there's so many that have been written about particular aspects of his work.
Right.
That astrology even, and I've got a lot of them behind me. So it's like he's looking over my shoulder. So yeah, it's just so amazing, and we are so fortunate to have that, because there's been nobody like him since he's left us.
Is there a particular reading that comes to mind that just a lot of it like talks about history and like Atlantis and Egypt? Is there a particular reading that you found shocking or super interesting, where he's talking about something in particular that kind of changed your view of the universe?
Not that changed my view. I think some of them I was surprised at the sense of humor that's in some of the readings. The reincarnation readings are the ones that I, of course, resonate most to. So when he would say, he would use the expression to meet self. And I picked up on that. And when I wrote the book on you did it to yourself again. That was in the back of my mind when he
Mhm.
would say, or he would say, nothing is random. You know, so the
Mhm.
whole idea of coincidence, you know, he said, no, everything has a reason. So, you know, there's so many of them, Brian. I can't
There
even
really
think of one
is.
in particular.
I'm fascinated by his discussion, regular discussion of the children of the law of one and Belial. You get this story in our history of this battle between these two groups that nobody talks about anymore. It's just super
No,
fascinating.
it's true. That's what TJ was, you know, he had a lifetime in Atlantis, and Mr. Cayce said, you know, you used to be in the Sons of Belial. He was a leader in the Sons of Belial. He was in the group that was responsible for the downfall of Atlantis.
The bad guys,
Yeah,
right?
the bad guys. And then he meets the soul of Gladys Davis, who ends up in this life being his aunt and Mr. Cayce's secretary. He meets her. She's part of the Daughters of the Law of One.
Mm-hmm.
And he falls in love with her and he changes sides and he becomes to them, he became a traitor, you know, and so he was like right at the top of the Sons of Belial, and then all of a sudden he switches sides and now they're hunting him. And in the reading, it said that he ended up taking groups of people out of Atlantis before it was destroyed, and he helped settle different parts of the world with them.
Wow.
So it's absolutely, you know, fascinating. And his life as Alexander, I think, was interesting too, except he doesn't think so. He says, I don't think there's anything great about that man. He just went around killing people.
Yeah.
And you know, so you're not real happy about that. Then the other two lives that Cayce gave him was one where he was helping to form the government of France in early France.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was I don't remember. Anyway,
No, I recommend people read your book
there were
because
4 of them.
Fascinating. Yeah. I wanted to touch on your book, Soul Writing, Conversing with Your Higher Self. It's a very fascinating book. To begin with, what is your concept of the higher self? What would you define it as?
That's your connection to spirit, your connection to the all that is. It's that divine cord that exists between you and everything and the universe itself, because we're like a chain, you know, we're all attached in some way. The higher self, the thing about soul writing is that you can contact spirit. So if you believe in a guardian angel, or you believe in ascended masters, or you want to talk directly to God or whatever, soul writing enables you to do that. So the way I explain it is, prayer is you talking to God, meditation is God talking to you, and soul writing is you taking notes.
Okay.
So it's going into an altered state of consciousness, which is just some deep breathing and relaxation exercises, and then connecting. It's like a phone home card, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phone home card, your phone spirit, and you could get answers to any question you have. So it's basically the same sort of process that Mr. Cayce used, because, you know, with Mr. Cayce, you had to ask him a question. He didn't volunteer, you know, when he went into a trance, he'd wait for the question. Then he would go to his source, and then get the answer and bring it down. So it's the same sort of thing. It's you writing in this altered state of consciousness. You can ask a question about anything and wait, and then spirit will come through you from above. It's a divine writing method. Come from above, through you, down your hand, down your arm, in your hand, and then out on the paper. It's not automatic writing, by the way. It gets confused with that sometimes. There is a difference, and I write about that in the book. But you know what? It could be used for just about anything. You could apply it to different aspects of your life. You could get past life information through soul writing. You can ask your past life aspect, that part of you from another lifetime can come forward and write down things, write to you. There's a great book that Frank DeMarco wrote called Chasing Smallwood, and that's how that's what he did. He was communicating with a past life aspect of himself, who was Joseph Smallwood, who lived during the Civil War. And so he and Joseph would have a conversation. You can do that. You know, you could develop your psychic abilities through it. You can just ask anything. I'm doing a 3-day course. It's the first time we're doing a certification course. I just got soul writing trademarked recently, and we're doing a 3-day certification. So it's a deep dive into how to do soul writing. And it's really great for professionals like social workers, psychologists, to work with their clients, to teach their clients how to do this. I noticed at the University of Virginia Hospital, they had a sign that talked about teaching cancer patients how to write in that state. And I'm working on a book about the Beatles right now. It's about the Beatles and spirituality. And how they planted a seed in our generation. Yeah. And I ended up with 16 pages of notes on things they said about reincarnation, which I did not know that they had said before. And the process of writing some of their music. You know, yesterday came to Paul in a dream.
Right.
And so it's that same method. So I'm really excited about this certification course. And so I hope people will go on my website. You can learn more about, or you could have a private soul writing session with me, or you could have a regression with me too. You can book it right on my website.
Fantastic. So, and one of my favorite chapters in that is that you can use the soul writing as a service to others. You can gain information and really use it to be of service. It's not just about yourself. This information can come in handy to help others.
Right. That's where the channeling comes in. Where if you have permission from somebody to go to your guides, this is what I do at the end of a regression. If people choose to do a past life regression with the soul writing, when we're finished with the regression, I show them how to do the soul writing. And then while they're writing, I'm writing too. I go and ask my friends upstairs, is there a message you could give me on their behalf that I could share with them? And so then I'll get a message and then I'll read it to them. And 9 times out of 10, I don't think the message is going to have any meaning for them. But every single time they say, it's right on point. It's exactly what I needed to hear. So it's very, very powerful. And it's something everybody can do. It's not something you have to have a special talent for. Like I said, Mr. Cayce he called it inspirational writing, because back then in the 30s and 40s, inspirational writing meant something different than it does today. Today, it's all about, if you type in inspirational writing on Amazon, you're going to get all books on Christian genre. Right. If you type in automatic writing, you're going to get all occult books. So neither one of them is what Mr. Cayce had in mind. So that's why I changed the name to soul writing. And it's just a joy to teach it. You can use it if you're a musician, you can use the process in order to create music, write music. And I talk about all the famous artists and musicians and writers in the past that have talked about this process. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. I know it's not me. It's coming from someplace, and that's what we explore. Where is it coming from, and how do you access that divine method of communication? It's so transformative. It's just so powerful.
So the final thing I wanted to cover is karma, which we kind of talked about before. The idea that we have sicknesses and things that are going on because of past lives. Do you think that we can clear the tables? Is the best way to do that through the past life regression? Or is there a way for us we have some sort of soul contract or reason that we're here and that's causing us to be poor, like in TJ Davis's case, or somebody that's sick, and we really get to the root of it, and it's from a past life. Is there a way for us to clear that karma in this present life quickly?
Yeah, I think that once you learn what the lesson is, what is it that you're working on in this life, and then you actually work on resolving that, then it'll clear it and you won't have to deal with it anymore. Now, I'm not necessarily saying you won't have to deal with it in this life, that it's instantly going to go away, but in the next lifetime, it goes into what I call your positive karmic bank account. So everything that you've completed, every lesson you have finished goes into that positive karmic bank account. You don't have to do it again. All you have to do, and you could pull on it anytime you want. So, you see little children that are can sit at the piano and just play Mozart without blinking an eye. They learn that from another lifetime. They're pulling on that ability. Some people have a green thumb. They don't know why. There's no logical reason for it. Some people are really good with numbers. Some people are really good building things. Some people are natural dancers or natural leaders. All of those things are in your positive karmic bank account. So the idea is get everything out of the karmic issue column and move it over into the positive one. So a lot of times when we do a regression, becomes an aha moment for people. Oh, now I get it. Now I see. And then once that happens, they're free of it and they can move on. So like I said, it's very, very powerful. And I've just seen tremendous changes in people's lives because of it. And at some point, like I said, you're gonna have finished all of your lessons in this life and then move on.
Amazing. You're doing a great service for people to go in and to learn these lessons. And it's a struggle for many people. They don't know, why am I always doing this? Why am I always making these mistakes? And they don't realize that it's something deep within our subconscious from a past life.
Yeah. Relationship issues, especially.
Right. Something that comes to mind, it's just a question. How often do you think, you see people that have gender issues? They think that, hey, I feel like I'm a female, right? Or somebody says, I feel like I'm a male. And maybe it's because they've been in the past life that other gender so often that they just don't feel right in their body, right?
Yeah. My understanding is that we're 75% one sex. In other words, I've been female 75% of the time. So that when I go back to a past life, most of them are as a female, although I have had male past lives, and then vice versa as well. So you decide before coming into this incarnation whether you want to be male or you want to be female. So you choose. A lot of people who choose to be female do so because of the nurturing aspect of it and the fact that they want to experience giving birth. I had a woman the other day, I asked her, why did you come in female? She says, I like the way it feels to be a woman and dancing.
Wow.
So I mean, you'd be surprised at some of the reasoning behind it. I had a really good friend who was with me in a prior lifetime, prior to this one. She was male in that life. She came in female in this life, came in kicking and screaming as female because she said it was a last minute switch. She had wanted to come in as male, but she ended up coming in as female. Well, why? Because there were things she needed to learn that she could only learn in a female body. So, we want to have a well-rounded experience. So you can't really understand the other sex unless you've been the other sex. And so we work on that. And I had a friend of mine who was a channeler. He was one of the most astounding channelers I had ever met. And he was gay, and a woman in the audience. Well, I used to bring him in, and we would have a group of people come and he would channel for them. He channeled Dr. Fredericks, who was an Akashic librarian. It was fascinating. But anyway, one day this woman said, I don't understand why people choose to be, why there's some people that are gay. Why would you choose that? And he looked at her. She obviously didn't know about his choice, right? So he said, well, I'm gay. Do you have a problem with me? And she said, well, no. And he goes, let me tell you, I've been predominantly female in my lives. So in my soul, I think of myself as female. When I look out I'm attracted to males because, I've been, now I know that's a very simplistic
Right.
type of explanation, but I'm just relaying what he said because it made a lot of sense at the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a choice that we make. Men love to be men. They love to be the strong, feel that strong body. And if women who incarnate as men, when they see themselves in a past life as a male, they're really happy. They go, oh, I get this nice strong body. I can do this and I can do that. And, men who remember being female, a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
A lot of resistance. I don't want to be female. I don't like feeling like this. I feel powerless. I feel weak. I don't want to do. So it's interesting because that's just, we want to experience every aspect of living in a physical body and living on the earth. And so that's part of it, the different genders that we would incorporate.
So thank you so much for spending your time with me and me being a little bit late and still being so nice
No
and answering
problem,
all my
Brian.
questions.
It's my pleasure.
And so you just type in Joanne Dimaggio on Amazon. You can see a list of her amazing books. You can find her website at Joanne Dimaggio, DIMAGGIO.com. And you can find information about that soul writing class that she had in July,
Right.
offered through ARE. And I recommend those books. The soul writing is a very fascinating way to tune into your psychic self and gain powerful information. And if you want to know what happens between lives, check out her most recent book. That is very, very powerful. And I found a lot of information from it. There's so many other things we missed, so many other books that you've written, and I could talk to you forever, but I want to thank you so much. And if anybody out there needs to get a past life regression, give Joanne, you can contact her on her website, and you might be able to learn more about your past lives and resolve some of these karmic issues.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Joanne.
Thank you.